Hancock, in my opinion, is Hollywood's biggest missed opportunity. Or rather, it was until recently. My name is Will, aka Mark, and today we're going to explore Hancock and its mark on Hollywood. Hancock as a movie was pretty positively received amongst the public. And what was not to like? It's a fun, comedic superhero romp featuring the charisma of A-lister Will Smith, along with a great cast that's only become better as time has gone along. Is it a perfect movie? No, there's plenty of issues that I'll highlight later, so let's start at the beginning. Hancock is primarily credited as being written by Vi Vincent No, a Vietnamese-American writer known for more niche properties upon further research. However, this form of Hancock was very different from what we ended up getting. In No's original screenplay titled Tonight He Comes, the story is cast in a much darker light and follows Hancock and the Embry family's son Aaron. It very much reads like a love child of Superman and Rambo that never really lands on his feet, and ultimately No wasn't thrilled with the way he told his story. This screenplay was written in 1996 and wasn't picked up until 2002 after being put in turnaround. For those unfamiliar with that term, turnaround is when a project gets new money injected into it by an outside source to help get it out the depths of development hell. And with this new money, it was then tasked by Vince freaking Gilligan to rewrite the script. And guys, I'm gonna be straight up with you. I had no idea this was the case until I was making this video, and as a Breaking Bad fan, I think that's just so cool and I'm ashamed I didn't know earlier. The script gets finished, and this is where things get a little weird for me. The studio originally penciled in John Mostow to direct this movie, and I'll save you the Google. He directed Terminator 3: Rise of the Machines. And the lead role was to be pitched to two actors who I consider to be extremely similar: Will Smith and Dave Chappelle. Seriously, they considered Dave Chappelle for the role of Hancock, and honestly, us getting Will instead adds to my "this is the darkest timeline" theory. But I digress. In 2005, the film was finally acquired by Sony Columbia Pictures, and in 2006, Will Smith signed on for the movie for the small price of $20 million plus 20% of the box office gross, which he could do at the time because he was very much in the prime of his career. Mostow agreed to direct, but then left the project, and in late 2006, Peter Berg was chosen as director. Peter Berg, whose filmography included up to that point movies like The Rundown and Friday Night Lights. So there's definitely some variety there, but nothing that screams big budget superhero movie. They start filming, and the name of this project is officially changed from Tonight He Comes to John Hancock, and finally what we received in Hancock. Funny enough, the marketing consultants didn't like this name as they found it too broad, and they wanted to name it Heroes Never Die. But Sony was kind of like, fuck you guys, we got Will Smith, people are gonna watch it anyways, which in retrospect is the most Sony option there is, so it's definitely a canon move for them. Which actually brings me nicely into my next topic. To get the full picture of why I feel like the timing of this movie wasn't the best, we have to talk about the man himself, Mr. Willard Smith. Yep, it's Willard, I'll save you that Google too. Will Smith at this point in his career was in what I would consider personally his prime. By 2008, Will Smith had launched not one but 3 franchises that are still ongoing today. Put together 2 Oscar-worthy performances, starred in one of the greatest rom-coms of all time, and dropped consistent banger after banger. So much so that even his missteps were still viewed as not that bad. Seriously, I have a friend that has Wild Wild West in his top 5 movies of all time. It happens. It just felt like Will Smith couldn't miss. It was this height of fame that made it possible for Will to negotiate things into his contract like a box office percentage. Like, I need y'all to know that's not something that happens often. Robert Downey Jr. needed to get through like 6 Iron Man appearances before he could demand such a thing, and those movies were making billions. So for the sake of discussion, we're gonna leapfrog Hancock and Will Smith's filmography for a moment. Following Hancock, Will Smith's next appearance was actually also in 2008 with the overall negatively rated 7 pounds. It was a pretty muted role for an actor like Will Smith, so personally I'm not really surprised it didn't land with audiences. And in my opinion, this movie marked the beginning of a chain of questionable decisions by Will. His next appearance wouldn't be until 2012 in a return to Men in Black with the 3rd installment that people kinda agreed was meh. It was cool, but it didn't capture the same magic as the originals. Then in 2013, the After Earth dilemma began. After Earth is what a lot of my argument here hinges on, but there'll be a section on that when we get there later. But just know this movie flopped harder than the Hawk Tuah girl. Then 2015 brought Focus, a movie that if you only watch the first 15 minutes, you'd think it's fire. And then Concussion, which showed the world that concussions are bad. Then Suicide Squad happened. Collateral Beauty, which I haven't really seen, along with Bright rounding off this era. I would consider this to be the slump of Will Smith's career, and this guy was still getting $100 million movies, which shows the real staying power that he has. And stay he did because his career actually started to take an upswing with the live action Aladdin, which Say what you want, I thought it was pretty good, and it's actually Will's highest grossing movie to date. Now, I'm gonna cheat and skip ahead because while I'd love to talk about the Gemini Man, I'm gonna talk about what we came here for, the slap. Now, I haven't seen King Richard, but the general consensus was that it was a good and honest performance from Will Smith, and I also knew that he was up for the Best Actor award. Now, normally I watch the Oscars every year and make predictions, but this one year I had to work and I couldn't watch live, and of course, Will Smith makes one of the most viral moments to ever happen on live TV, featuring Chris Rock's face. Now, do I think Will Smith should have hit Chris Rock at the Oscars specifically? No, probably not. There's a time and a place to address things. But I'm also conflicted because I'm in the boat that Chris Rock deserved a good smack, honestly.
And then all the negative things we think about black people, this fucker.
You're saying I'm a nigger?
Yes, you are the niggerest fucking white man I have ever.
Oh, I don't think he could do that.
Oh.
However, the general public was much less understanding than me, and Will was quickly banned from the Oscars for 10 years. And publicly apologized many times. Following this incident, Will starred in that humiliation ritual slave movie, and then Bad Boys Ride or Die, which I still think should have been called Bad Boys for Life, but fuck me, I guess. Which brings us to the present day. Why was this necessary? Because I want you all to remember two pivotal points in his career for later: After Earth and the slap. So I suppose in this effort, we should talk about the movie Hancock as it exists now and what I think of it. Now, I'm assuming if you're watching this video, you've already seen Hancock, possibly multiple times, so I'm going to give you all my thoughts. Spoilers ahead, and please check out the original release. Oh, and we're gonna go by X, because frankly my opinion swings greatly as the movie goes along. John Hancock, played by Will Smith, is a degenerate, alcoholic, irresponsible being that somehow has the powers of flight, invulnerability, and super strength. And we learn early on that he's sort of the resident superhero for Los Angeles. But the people there don't really like him because he breaks shit all the time and is really careless, even though he means well, because I assume he wouldn't be doing it if he didn't. But essentially the movie starts out as a crash course on how bad Hancock is at this hero thing. Then we're introduced to Ray Embry, a PR specialist played by one of my personal favorite comedic actors and also dramatic actors now, Jason Bateman. Ray somehow ends up parked in the middle of the damn train tracks, which, looking back as an adult, I'm putting Ray at just as much fault as Hancock here. How do you end up on a train track in stop-start LA traffic? I get being on autopilot driving home, but you're just not trying here. But, like I alluded to, Hancock swoops in and saves the day, and definitely the worst way possible. And wanting to show his gratitude, Ray publicly thanks him and asks him if he can drop him off at home.
Great. Thank you.
He then introduces him to his son Aaron, played by Jay Head, you know him from The Blind Side. And then there's his wife Mary, played by one of my personal favorite action stars, Charlize Theron, who, also side note, should have been Captain Marvel. No shade to Brie Larson because she's a great actress, but Charlize has that badass edge to her that I just feel like Brie doesn't have. Granted, I haven't seen the Marvels, so I could be tripping. What was I talking about again? Oh yeah. Then, when the night winds down, we get to what I consider to be the actual plot of this movie. Ray offers to help with Hancock's image, and Hancock accepts. The dynamic between these two is amazing in this movie. The Will Smithisms and the charisma alongside Bateman's dry humor really does it for me in this, and it's high-key the best part of this movie in my humble opinion. Then Mary shows up, itching to break up the bromance between these guys, and shows them that there's a warrant for Hancock's arrest. And where some see a setback, Ray sees a setup for a comeback and tells Hancock he needs to go to jail. Hancock then apologizes to the public and turns himself in, and that's how we end Act 1. This is really where this movie shines for me, and there isn't much I'd change here. We're introduced to a character who at his core is lonely, longing for more than is afforded to him but constantly pushing people away. The scene that really highlights this, unfortunately, is only in the director's cut. This is where Hancock meets this woman in a bar that has this weird sort of superhero fetish or obsession with Hancock, who claims that her sister was saved by Hancock the year prior. Long story short, she gets Hancock to pull out his John, and we learn that Hancock has another superpower. This scene starts pretty comedic, but ends with the lady leaving Hancock and kinda terrified, which makes sense because she almost got blasted with at least the force of a gun. And you can't help but feel for her and Hancock here. I think it's a shame that only people who bought the DVD got to see this scene because it hits pretty hard for me. Hancock at his core is lonely, and this scene, while comedic in a way, is still pretty tragic also. It shows that Hancock can never truly relax and let his guard down with a normal person because in a situation so human as, being with someone, it could have super deadly results for the other person. It brings a layer to Hancock to me because maybe Hancock isn't an asshole because he wants to be, but he's an asshole because he feels he has to be.
Don't you think?
Be careful.
Okay, my bad. Humanity and community are huge aspects of this movie, and that absolutely shines once the family gets involved. The bromance, the drunk uncle dynamic with the son, and even the whole dynamic with Mary and what that becomes later are all kind of welcomed aspects here. Also, I want to add that for 2008, the flying in this movie and the VFX do not look bad at all. In fact, they look better than newer Will Smith movies. Looking at you, Gemini Man. Even the spots that look kind of derpy still get pulled off, and I think that's largely due to the Will Smith effect. He can kind of make anything look cool. So, all in all, the first act definitely sticks the landing in introducing us to our characters and the world that they live in. Our second act starts with Hancock getting to prison, and you instantly get the vibe that Hancock might not be the most popular guy here, which I always thought was hilarious because what the fuck are you gonna do about it? This guy is Superman with a drinking problem, and you're gonna test him on day one of his alcohol withdrawal? This is just natural selection at a certain point. Like, I can understand holding a grudge, but we also watched the guy kick an SUV through a building spike. You might just want to keep that one inward. But these guys have some sort of death wish and decide to keep on poking the bear, and then get human centipeded, which is a word I never thought I'd have to say. It's hilarious because I think this is the first time Hancock has legit ever done this to someone because he looks absolutely disgusted here. Then Hancock gets his first visitor, Ray, who lets him know they want him to serve 8 years, and Hancock isn't psyched about that. So Ray's able to talk him down into sticking to the plan. And then we get a montage of Hancock's self-improvement, and this is one of the super strong segments of the movie for me. You see the step-by-step rebuilding of Hancock as a persona and as a hero, but they also give you these radio segments that show the public opinion of Hancock and how it changes as he spends time behind bars out of the public eye. It's an effective vehicle for the public opinion, and it gives us more of a look between this friendship/partnership between Ray and Hancock as well. So Act 2 has me very conflicted because I love the first portion of it where Hancock is making his amends and you slowly see him becoming a better person, but I do have some problems with it also. Hancock's progression during his 2-week prison stint is nothing if not gradual, but when we do see the cracks in the armor start to come through, it really does feel good. My only issue is that it ends way too soon. It feels like once he starts to make some progress, the movie's just like, yep, we're good, so let's get to the superhero stuff. And that's cool, but when you got an actor like Will Smith and a real opportunity to dig into a character, I feel like you should always take it. Part of me is still waiting for an actual monologue from Hancock while he's at those anger management sessions in prison, but it never really happens. Then things get interesting because Hancock gets a visit, but not from Ray, from Mary and Aaron. This scene is more of a testament to Charlize and her acting because in this scene she shows a different energy that we haven't seen before. There's a compassion that was missing before and maybe even a touch of longing. And then it finally happens. The chief of police calls for Hancock. And after what I assume is a quick shit shower and shave, Hancock is on the move. But I will say, if I have to sacrifice that bit of emotion in that scene for the debut scene we got for Hancock, then so be it, because my boy is absolutely locked in. Now, do I love the costume? No, it kind of just looks like the X-Men costumes from the Bryan Singer movies, but there's a lot of room to grow from this design. Then Hancock just kind of auras his way in and saves the pinned down cop. Consensually, of course.
Do I have permission to touch your body?
Yes!
Now all that's left is the bank and the hostages, and I love this scene because Hancock goes straight Batman horror movie on these guys once he knows like there aren't really cameras on him anymore. And he's picking them off all one by one until there's only one big bad left, who definitely has a name, I just don't really care at the moment. Then Hancock hits him with a Destructo disc and ends the whole ordeal to the applause of the now adoring public. Hancock and the Embries then go out to celebrate, and we get some more lore, which is essentially this. Aaron is Ray's kid from another relationship and Mary stepped in as a stepmom. And then Hancock gets asked about his origin and discloses the following. He is an amnesiac that woke up with a skull fracture in a Miami hospital with no recollection of where his powers actually came from or who he was prior to waking up. Also, he got the name John Hancock from the hospital because he didn't know his name. Also, this was 80 years ago, so he doesn't age. But we get some serious insight from this scene on Hancock's character because as Hancock sees things, no one was there for him at the hospital and he's been alone ever since, wondering what kind of a bad person he had to have been to deserve that kind of treatment, which explains the drinking because, damn, but also shows that his attempts to help seem to have been out of some drunken attempt to atone for past sins that he thinks he may have committed. I don't know how many other people see it that way, but it kind of cuts deep when you think about it. But then Mary apologizes, which, holy, if you know what the twist is of this movie already, this apology is so different on the second viewing. But if you for some reason haven't seen this movie, hang tight. Ray has a little bit too much fun at dinner because Hancock has to carry Ray into the house. And following this, Hancock and Mary have one of the most awkward interactions, and that leads to them realizing that Hancock has a bruise on his hand, which is weird. He's supposed to be invulnerable. She then tells him he should go. One thing leads to another, the two start to kiss until she casually sends Hancock through a fridge and out the door like Jazzy Jeff, which is definitely a turn. And after some convincing from Hancock the next day, he's able to unlock that dialogue option and the two decide to speak. And this is where the movie starts to get messy. You remember those guys that Hancock ran into in his prison stint? The ones that got a little bit closer than they ever thought they would be? Yeah, they're back along with that bank robber whose name I might know by the end of writing the script. The one that Hancock gave the old Mace Windu treatment? Yeah, they're gonna team up. I thought this was stupid then, and it's still stupid now, but let's get there before we rant. Back to the good parts, Hancock and Mary are now meeting so Hancock can get some answers, but he has to promise to leave LA after, and Mary claims that she and Hancock were worshipped as gods or angels, but nowadays the people call them superheroes. And there were more of them, but they have all died out over time, leaving just the two of them. She also claims they're brother and sister, which...
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him.
And Hancock doesn't buy it at all after that kiss. So he calls the deal off and goes looking for Ray to tell him the truth. One pretty massive CGI fight later, and Mary reveals that Hancock is her husband and that the others paired up and died, which is a much different story. Apparently proximity to one another can cause mortality to occur? Either way, they can become killable, which explains why Hancock's skull was also able to be cracked by a mugger, and why there was no one there from at the hospital. After this revelation, Hancock begins to backslide, and there's his name. Kenneth Red Parker Jr. That's why I didn't remember, it's literally just a name. While making a purchase, the cashier codes for Hancock's help, but in the process, Hancock is shot and wounded. So I'm going to call this right here the end of Act 2. And the most intriguing part of this act is the lore behind Hancock and this universe they've introduced us to. We learned that Hancock and Mary have been together for over 3,000 years, and that they're older than that. Apparently something happened in Persia, Greece, and Brooklyn that was major between themselves or the others like them that are introduced. Some people think this edition is messy, and while I agree it doesn't make things easier to follow, it does set up a great amount of opportunities for Hancock as a potential franchise. More on that later. The biggest problem with these movies is that it would have a similar problem as Superman. How do you hurt someone that can't be hurt? Hancock takes that a step further with posing the same question but with a hero that has no ties to anyone. Which explains his devil-may-care attitude at the start because dude literally doesn't give a fuck. He doesn't have to. Also, I think it's pretty funny that even with this revelation, we still don't know what Hancock's actual name is. Like, why didn't Mary tell him what his name was? Now, onto the movie's worst decision in my opinion. Bringing back Red as the movie's big bad was a weird choice. You put three guys in front of me, one of which got his head literally shoved up another one's ass, and it's already tough for me to respect that group. And now we're on to the final act. Hancock is now being rushed into the emergency room in critical condition, and Ray is bombarded by the media wondering how this could have happened. Mary then arrives at the hospital to warn Hancock of the situation again and tells him that he needs to leave if he wants to recover. We then get the most lore we're going to get out of these two. Apparently every time they become mortal, they get attacked, and Hancock saves them, usually at the cost of his own well-being. She mentions a they that attacked them, which indicates a group like the Paladins from Jumper maybe, but never really says who they are. She also says that Hancock was built to save more people than any of the rest of these godlike beings, and that he was an insurance policy of the gods. Like guys, they were sequel baiting, prequel baiting, all of that. Then all of a sudden Red shows up and Mary gets a little TJ'd and our final fight officially begins. Oh yeah, and Ray's there too, forgot to tell y'all about that. All things considered with this scene, Hancock is still handling things pretty well with this nerf that he has, and wait, is their pain linked? I'm sorry, this third act is a lot. Then Red shows up and shoots Hancock a few more times before Ray gives him the old Phil Coulson treatment and sends him on his way. The next scene makes no real sense, so I'm gonna break it down like this. Hancock and Mary both die or get really close to it, I assume, but Hancock gets a take backseat and jumps out the window and flies away. So they both recover. Also, Hancock flies to the moon and carves/paints Ray's logo into it because of course he can. And he fights some crime in his new home of New York City, and the movie essentially ends after that. As you can probably tell by now, this act is not my favorite by far in this movie. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm actually a pretty big fan of the lore and the explanations given by Mary in this act. It provides answers to the bigger world that the last act introduced us to, while also still leaving some mystery to be explored. But by far the weirdest part of this act is the re-inclusion of Red. It just really didn't feel like an earned villain at any point. And while also never really feeling like a problem for Hancock, and Honestly, I'm not even sure if the other two guys were shown on screen again, to be honest, but considering one literally got cavity implanted up another man's chocolate starfish, it was tough to be afraid of them anyways. Plus, they just randomly break out of prison and escape, which really makes me wonder if normal people could just break out, what hope did they ever have of keeping Hancock there? This act is weird because the antagonist of this movie to start was Hancock's bad reputation, and by the end they just try to shoehorn Red in, and that just doesn't really work like that. The whole goal of the movie was rushed, and we're sort of ushered into what feels like an entirely different movie. So, what do I think should have been done? The biggest thing this movie could have done is just slow down. The focus of fixing Hancock's reputation could have taken an entire movie, and I think it would have been better for it. Show us more of reckless Hancock. Make us understand why LA hates this guy, but also give us more of the moments that endear us to Hancock. For example, if you only saw this movie in theaters, that scene with the groupie in his RV just doesn't exist. So in that version, you have no idea of how lonely Hancock is until Act 2 when he has dinner with Mary and Ray. And maybe in this new version, we get more time with Hancock in prison and more actual progression. Like, this movie is called Hancock, and we walk away from it not really knowing much more about our title character besides he doesn't even know who he is. So why didn't they help bridge that a little bit more? Oh, and also save Red's return for a sequel instead of forcing him back into the same movie literally 30 minutes later. So why do I say this movie is one of Hollywood's biggest missed opportunities? Or rather that it was? It's because of the franchisability of these movies and how much meat they left on the bones just to never come back to it. This movie was released in the same year and made more money than freaking Iron Man, the movie to launch the MCU and make billions. The era of superheroes started in 2008 if you ask me. No offense to Toby, Christian, and even you, Wesley. And Will Smith had an opportunity to be at the forefront of it, but instead he sat out the years 2009 and 2012 because of a little project called 1000 AE or After Earth. I call it a project because it was supposed to be bigger than just a franchise. After Earth was intended to be at least a trilogy, and I'm not going to get too much into the weeds of it, but this was intended to bolster Jaden Smith's budding career, along with a multimedia franchise called 1000 AE that would spawn TV shows, books, web series, theme park rides, you name it. So a ton of time and resources was poured into this project, and it absolutely tanked. After Earth showed us something the world had never seen to that point. It showed us Will Smith could miss. Now, I'm not going to act like this derailed Will Smith's career at all, really, but just imagine the possibilities of a Will Smith-led superhero franchise alongside the MCU. I think there's a world where those movies could have at least gotten better tractions, or they at least would have offered more fight than the DCEU in terms of providing healthy competition. Hell, the DCEU even tried to put Will Smith at the forefront kinda with that Suicide Squad movie. But there's a chance that can change. It's funny how the world works because when I originally was writing this video, it was supposed to just be Hancock is Hollywood's biggest missed opportunity, point blank. But then, this happened.
Hancock 2, that's my favorite Will Smith movie.
Hancock, that's what, so there's a really cool Hancock 2 idea. We haven't even talked about it, so I'm gonna give you one little piece. Zendaya will be being approached for Hancock 2.
So we might be back. So Will Smith, here's my outlook on this upcoming movie because we've reached my main point. You have become Hancock in real life. This movie has strangely become a nice allegory for Will Smith in his real life. Will Smith is currently in what I consider his redemptive phase, and with the success of Bad Boys 4, recent stream appearances, and music video success, Will Smith has shown he still has draw through the controversy, so why not give the people what they don't know that they need? The MCU brand isn't as strong as it used to be, still successful, but not the holier-than-thou franchise it used to be, so this could be the perfect time to return to the leather spandex. Honestly, the costume could use an update, but I digress. The possibilities of this franchise feel pretty boundless, so I'm just going to give you all a list, and Will, if you're watching this, write it down. This series is no longer bounded by time, as you have 3,000 years of history to work with. And for those of you saying Will and Charlize are older now, that's fine because they're close to each other. I'd assume they age more, but also they don't look that much older. Which brings me to my next point. Explain what these things are a little bit more. Who are the people that come after Hancock and Mary when they're vulnerable? And how do they even know? And can we get Hancock's real name at some point? There's a lot to this universe left to explore, and I'm grateful to the production team for introducing us to it, and I'm legitimately excited for the return. I'm not too convinced Zendaya will be there for it, considering she's already one of the top 5 busiest actresses and models in the world, but even just them announcing they may approach her is a step in the direction I'd hope they go. So here's the Hancock and what we may get in the future. And thank you for watching. So if you guys liked the video, make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, hit that notification bell. That way you know all of our future videos that drop. I'm going to be working. I'm going to be out here getting stuff out, podcast, tier list, all sorts of stuff. So stay tuned. We're going to have a lot of fun. and I will be here posting every single week, hopefully multiple times a week. So let's do it. Have a good one. Peace.